Okay, fight still continues in the attempt to end violence against children and tell us what is being done by the country to implement national policies to protect them. Child Protection and Family Services CEO, Mrs. Rosalie Gage Gray, or as Harry said, Doctor, soon to be.
I did.
Good morning, Miss Rosalie. How are you?
Good morning, I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Very well. It's good to see you. I'm glad to hear about this policy to end violence against children. First, tell us, it's disturbing, but let's hear the stats. Let's hear the situation as it stands now with children who are subjected to violent punishment at home. Is this number correct? Are we sure?
So we have been seeing increased levels of violence against our children over the years. The CPFSA, through the National Children's Registry, gets about 1,200 cases reported per month. And that has been consistent until about 2020 when we had the COVID pandemic. Then we saw some decline. We're not saying that the abuses were not taking place, but possibly the access to children to make those reports was somewhat affected. But come late 2021 up to 2022, we are seeing the numbers going back over 1,000 cases per month reported.
Your stats say 8 out of 10 Jamaican children under 15 are subjected to violent punishment at home. 8 out of 10?
Yes, that's really corporal punishment. From a cultural perspective, you know, people, we tend to hit our children, pinch, thump, you know, slap. And that has serious emotional and psychosocial impact on our children. And we are seeking to take the necessary steps to have probably a full ban, not probably, a full ban of corporal punishment, because we see the impact it's having. Now we have to have a conversation and a full public education campaign around this because of the cultural context in which we live.
And that's what I wanted to ask Mrs. Gage Gray, because when we say violent punishment at home, that's the term we use. But for many parents, that's not what they have in their mind.
No.
So when we say violent punishment, what are some of the things that we are talking about? I know there are extremities, so what are we talking about?
Right, we are talking about punishment that would cause harm to the child. So if you beat the child and there are welts, we have seen cases where bones have been broken, you know, children have even died from the punishment that they have gotten. So that's what we're talking about. But anything that you do to the child that creates harm. And in the Child Care and Protection Act, Section 9 classifies that as cruelty to the child. So anything that you do that is going to harm the child, inflict pain on the child.
And harm would also encompass the mental, correct? Psychosocial, psychological.
Yes.
It's not just the words on your hand.
No. So the child becomes withdrawn. The child is not focused as they used to be. The child is affected through learning at school. So it's a several impact that punishment, severe punishment has on our children.
Yeah.
You meant, go ahead, Harris.
So two things, but let me start with the first one. What happens in a situation like that? I'm a neighbor, I live in a community, I'm a teacher, and I realize that a child is consistently being exposed to violent punishment at home. What do I do?
Call 211. That's the reporting line that we are using. This line has replaced the 888 Protect. If you call 888 Protect, you will still get through to us. But 211, very easy number to remember. We encourage our children to self-report. And so, which is why we went for a 3-digit number that they are able to call into our, it's a 24 hours. So somebody is always on the line, so you can call. So it's 211 is the number to call now to make a report. Okay. And there are prescribed persons, or teachers, or healthcare professionals, or social workers, anybody who comes in direct contact based on their profession, have a duty to report. And as a normal citizen, you have a duty to report. As you said, if you heard your neighbor, heard the children crying, or you hear children being beaten, it's your duty to report.
Yeah.
And you just need to call 211 and an officer will be there one of our children's officers will be there to do that investigation.
So 8 out of 10 at home. We mentioned the education campaign. Des has made the point about parents who are disciplining children the way they were disciplined, so they don't know that the broomstick and the mop stick and the fling after with the pot is not a thing and actually qualifies as abuse. But then when the children leave home now to go to school, stats says 65% of them are reporting that they are bullied there as well. So when we talk about this policy, what are those mechanisms that you're putting in place to address the matter in all of the spaces it's happening? This has got to be a headache for the CPSFA to kind of put parameters around this and measures in this to make it, practical.
So we are part of the global partnership to end violence against children, and we were one of the first 15 Pathfinder countries, first in the Caribbean, to sign on to the partnership. And this partnership calls for a national plan of action to end violence against children. And so that plan the goal is to create an environment where children are protected. And it has some outcomes, the legal and policy framework. So we have the Child Crime Protection Act, Sexual Offences Act, and all of those pieces of legislation that seeks to protect our children, the Child Diversion Act by the Ministry of Justice. And it speaks to the services that we provide. What services do we provide, and are we providing them in a timely manner? It speaks to support for community and family, because once you get the children and you would have worked with them, how do you then send them back to their families or work with the families in the communities so they are protected? As we know, children are abused at home and in their community for the most part. And so how do you create that environment there? How do you support parents that they can be better parents to their children? Yeah. And also, how do we know that we are successful? So the monitoring and evaluation framework is also critical as we seek to implement this policy.
Mm-hmm. And on the end of May, you gathered with your partners, Ministry of Education and Youth, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, UNICEF, and because it was the Jamaica's National Policy Dialogue on Ending Violence Against Children, where are we now in terms of that policy, Mrs. Gage-Gray? How do we move forward? I know that you've crafted and framed one. What do we do now?
Right, so there is a committee that is set up, have several subcommittees. Subcommittees mirrors the outcomes that we have. So there's a legal and policy, there is communication, there is child protection. So different committees are set up and they meet periodically to look at how our ministries, agencies, and departments are implementing the policy across their mandate. So for example, for us at the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, our mandate is respect to children who are in need of care and protection. These are children who have been abused, abandoned, neglected. So we receive the reports, we do the investigations, and we present to the courts. How are the courts doing in terms of hearing those cases, and what is the role of SISOCA in those to ensure that the matters are investigated, they are brought to court, and that the perpetrators can be held to justice. So all of us have a role to play, and this committee brings all the parties together. So the National Policy Dialogue was an aim to put us back into focus. We went through the pandemic, we had to slow down a bit, but we are saying we are still committed to the global partnership. We are still committed to the children and their families in Jamaica to make sure that we are implementing policies, laws that are geared at protecting them, that are geared at protecting their rights, as we seek to ensure that they are protected. So it's all hands on deck. We, not just government, but private sector, NGO community, the church, and all persons in Jamaica has a duty, and we are calling on them to respond and to help us to have our children live, a productive life. I just want to reference the thing we had on Saturday, where it's a girl party, it's a tea party for girls at 10. And we have been seeing younger girls, younger boys being abused, and we felt that we needed to kind of reset, so we brought them into a space, where they could interact with each other, but also hear from professionals in the field in terms of, how is my self-esteem? How do I communicate? What does it mean to be a girl? And how do we want, as older girls, we all were in fascinators and all of that. So how do we impart to our young ladies or young men that this is what it means to be a child? And we want you to grow and enjoy that childhood.
Yeah,
We don't want you to suffer any abuse.
Yeah.
Right? And if it happens,
Yes.
how do you get help?
How do you get help?
How do you get help?
It's
How
important.
do we help you to restore you to that place where you can be successful?
All right, we have to go, Rosalie, but thank you so much for all that you continue to do at the CPFSA. I know it's a continuous cycle, and the dynamism of the agency in responding to all of the challenges is really commendable. So thank you for speaking with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely,
And God bless.
absolutely. Take care. I always ask her, like, how do you sleep at night? Because I know the stories that she would hear and the members of her team and people like the children's advocate. It's tough. Our kids are going through a hard time.
They are.
And so we have to say thank you to the folks who are trying to, intervene and make their lives better. CEO, Child Protection and Family Services Agency, Rosalie Gage.